Yo, what's up? Part 2 of episode 5, Those Two Metal Dudes. Thanks for not tuning in. I know no one's watching because this isn't even uploaded to YouTube yet, but it will be later. But no one will probably watch it then either, so that's okay. So continuing on with the twin guitar attack, we're doing genres. We already, in the first installment, if you watched it, if you didn't, if you're not watching now, whatever, it's cool. Yeah. We did traditional / forefathers, godfathers, whatever you want to do in heavy metal. Then we did thrash metal, and we ended off with death metal. Next on the list, I'm gonna let Chris take it off, start it off.
So next on the list is gonna be black metal, which this one was the hardest for me because
very tough.
I mean I listen to black metal, but I'm not big into black metal. So really with mine, I just kind of went with what I know, and if you're watching and you love black metal, and then when I do my list, you're like, oh, whatever. I mean, I only went with what I love, So it's just,
you're never gonna make black metal fans happy anyway. So
whatever, go burn a church, whatever. I mean, But anyway, my 3, I went Dimmu Borgir. Number 3, number 2, Dissection, and then number 1 is Emperor. That is my 3. I had to put, when I did the list, Emperor went number 1 automatically. Ihsahn to me, I can't think of the other dude offhand, but I don't know. I mean, it's just from the first time I heard Emperor, loved him, loved it. Later on in life, Dissection. Always, that and Dimmu and Emperor were in the beginning my kind of favorite black metal anyway. But that's pretty much my list. It's it's probably a lot different probably than yours, probably because we don't ever talk about this beforehand until we actually sit here and we're doing it, and then we're learning that. Because that's why if you look and I have a lot of shock on my face because a lot of it's been like his number 2s, number 1s are the same as mine.
So, we have spent a lot of time, many years, listening to music together. We played a lot of music together in bands, and it shows. I don't know if we've rubbed off on each other or that's why we hung out and played music together in the first place, because we're the only 2 people that think this way. Because so far in every genre, we have had 2 out of our 3 have been the same, maybe different order. It's no different in the black metal genre. That's why I grinned a little bit when he started naming off his top 3. Slightly different, but pretty close. So for me, number 3, okay, the black metal thing, like Chris said, I used to hate black metal, honestly. It took me a long time to get on board with some of it, and some of the first stuff I finally was really into because of the musicianship and the production and things that I like that are not traditional in black metal. In the first wave of black metal were Emperor and Immortal. Those were like 2, and Dimmu. Those were like kind of like the first. Those were probably like the 3 bands that I love these bands, but I'm still not really a black metal fan. Mm-hmm. Over time, more and more time, and more obsessive, going down these rabbit holes of extreme metal, I've become quite a fan of a lot of black metal. Still not a lot of the old traditional stuff. I mean, like Emperor and Immortal, really like probably 2 of the few from that older generation of black metal, even though Dimmu's been around since the early 90s, so I mean, I guess they're technically maybe like the second wave, but I love a lot of the second and sort of current wave of black metal. Yeah, the production got better, the musicianship, like Watain, from Sweden. Yeah. One of my favorite,
I love Marduk, and
I like some of the Marduk albums that I've heard. Maybe some of their older stuff I'm not crazy about production way.
Yeah, I mean,
but Absu, they're sort of like, are they really black metal? Whatever, 1349. I mean, there's a lot of really good black metal out there.
Young and in
you
the
just gotta find it. Yeah. So my number 3 is Dark Funeral, because
oh, cool. Okay.
I got one of their albums several years back, and I think I was actually given the album. I want to say maybe Tim from Stentoria. I think he gave me this album, and I was like, man, this is awesome. It's super ultra satanic. It's super dark and evil, heavy as nails. Production was good. It was like really good musicianship. I was like, man, this is my kind of black metal. And then I watched the video for My Funeral, and it's like, I love this band. Love this band. So I'm going with Dark Funeral, number 3, Lord Ahriman, who's pretty much been in the band. He's kind of like the only constant revolving guy in the band. And Shaq Mole, however you pronounce these crazy black metal pseudonyms that these musicians have for each other or for themselves. But that's kind of like the dynamic duo to me. I think both of those guys are still in the band. Like Lord Ahriman's, he's the brainchild behind it, but I think Shaq Mole is still in the band. He's not an original member, I think. He joined later, but anyway. Number 2 on my list, Dimmu Borgir. They're a controversial band in the first place because they're one of the most successful bands in the black metal genre. They put on such big productions with their shows. I watched a concert recently where they played with an orchestra.
Yes.
And they had a female vocalist doing guest vocals with them, and it was freaking amazing. I mean, like watching this big freaking black metal band on stage in front of thousands of people with a full orchestra blew my mind that this style of music could do that. And Dimmu, they do it, and they're really successful, really good musicians. And I remember when we were in Sciatica together and we were in a van on tour listening to one of the Dimmu albums. It pretty much made me a fan. It was probably an album that you brought for the trip.
Oh, if it wasn't, it was Puritanical Euphoric Misanthrope.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite Dimmu
I
albums.
became a fan, and after Sciatica broke up, I ended up, really getting into them and getting some of their albums on my own. I'm like, man, I love this band. I still couldn't get Jared into him. He was a Cradle of Filth guy. I'm not really a fan of that band, so we just kind of agree to disagree on that.
Yeah.
But to each his own. So Salinos and Galder, those are like the dynamic duo. Galder's not an original member, but he's been with them for probably 20 years or more, or a long time. And he's Old Man's Child. His other band outside of Dimmu. He's just really, really good guitar playing. Like maybe not always thought of in the black metal genre. I mean, you listen to old Mayhem stuff, you're gonna be, Burzum, you're gonna be like, wow, this is like guitar shredding 101. It's not, but there's some really, really, really killer twin guitar attacks. Number 1, Emperor, man. I mean, I don't think there's ever been or maybe ever will be a band that can top that with Ihsahn and Samoth.
So,
I mean, dude, Ihsahn, like I have one of his solo albums. I mean, he's just, dude. See, I'm speechless. Emperor, man. Number 1.
no, I mean,
That's it. I quit.
I'm
I'm going to let you start off the next genre, the next to last.
Oh,
This one was a really tough one. I know that.
Oh, yeah, this one. We're gonna go with the doom, which is it's gonna have a mixture of stoner and sludge within it, and having to pick 3 within all of that. My 3. Number 3 is gonna be Electric Wizard. Number 2 is gonna be Windhand, and then number 1 is gonna be Crowbar. That was a. I love this genre. It's probably one of my favorites. It was just, it's all difficult, but I thought like Windhand to me has some of the best. It's the riffs. Those two. I mean, just hearing all. I mean, like every time I listen to Windhand, I'm like, damn, they got great riffs. I mean, it's just. Then the number 1 though, Crowbar. We had a discussion long ago about when we were thinking about doing this, and you brought up 2 bands, and they're actually going to be both my number 1s.
Yeah. Mine too.
And but because when I talked to you and you brought them up, it totally flipped the script for me for what I was thinking about doing it. And then when you brought up Crowbar, I was like, man, I have never thought about them as a twin guitar attack until you go and then you listen to it and you're like, yep, this would be, I would say, I would throw Crowbar at you, if we were battling band, like I would throw Crowbar out as like my ace into something as far as whatever you're throwing at me. I'd just be like, oh, Crowbar, you know. Electric Wizard, heavy, stonerish, whatever you want to, where you want to call it. We lumped everything in. This is our show. We don't care. We'll do whatever we want. We'll try and do We're going to do decades next, and then y'all can just sit and listen to all that. And then love it. Yeah, and then then kind of go from there. But that's my top 3 for this one. And then now I'm very curious as to what your top 3 is for this one. So.
I got a little sad there because this is the first genre that we have not had 2 of the same bands in the top 3. Only one, and we know which one that is. This one was tough too because doom and sludge to me, like there's a fine line, like with Crowbar, are they a sludge metal band or are they a doom metal band? My son, who's 11, loves Crowbar, loves doom metal. He likes Sunno and bands like that. He often refers to Crowbar as doom metal. He refers to Neurosis as doom. So, for him, anything that has slow, plodding, heavy rhythms and riffs in it, can be considered doom. So, I mean, there are elements of Neurosis that are very doom metal, but as a band, I wouldn't say Neurosis is a doom metal band. I wouldn't really say Crowbar is either. So it's tough. And then stoner, there's a fine line between stoner metal and stoner rock. And so that was tricky for me because I wanted so bad to put Kyuss in there as my stoner band. But they only had one guitar player. I'm like, I can't put him in. Just like Black Sabbath being the godfathers of metal and for sure doom metal, but they only had one guitar player. So this was tough. My number 3, and this is a band that's probably often overlooked, and I think they're one of the best in the doom stoner. I wouldn't really put them in the sludgy category, but definitely the doom/stoner. Really heavy on the doom emphasis, and I think they're one of the most underrated bands in this genre. And I think they're like basically they took the torch from Black Sabbath, but they had 2 guitar players, and they added a level of heaviness that was not heard in Black Sabbath, and that is Trouble. Bruce Franklin and Rich Wartell, man, 1979 to the current day, man. Those guys have been the same guys as I was born in 1979, so we're talking 41 years. Those guys have been doing it, still doing it. Old as dirt. I'm just kidding. They're not old as dirt. They're like, probably around my parents' age. So, they've been around the block a while. 41 years playing in the same band together. And a lot of people, you never even hear them talking about Trouble, unless you're a fan of this style of metal. And I mean, Bruce Franklin is basically the mastermind behind Trouble. 1995's Plastic Greenhead, man, that's like a classic Trouble album. And I mean, I watched some videos recently when I was doing all this research from just a few years ago. So pretty recent period where they've gotten their current singer. They had the same singer for a long time. And seeing those guys like, late 50s, early 60s, and still just like putting the most Black Sabbath laden, sludgiest, slimiest doom riffs, and both of them can play leads. I mean, and Rich Wartell, man, that dude's like a sick lead guitar player. Trouble, man, I had to put him in there. Awesome, love him. Number 2, Down. A little, like, hey, but what are you doing putting Down in there? You're not supposed to put a supergroup in there, but I don't care because I'm like, man, when I think of doom and sludge, there's 2 bands at the top that have the 2 guitar players, and that's Down and Crowbar. So I had to put down Kirk and Pepper Keenan, man. Come on, man. I mean, that's all I'm gonna say about Down. Number 2. Number 1, obviously, Crowbar. There is no one you can put above Crowbar when you're talking about doom metal, sludge metal with 2 guitar players. And yes, the whole twin guitar thing, it really makes you flip the script on your thought process, because originally when Chris brought it up, I was thinking, you're thinking Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, that kind of thing.
Twin.
But then, but then I started sort of thinking outside the box and just in general thinking of metal bands that have 2 guitar players. And there's a lot of them. And Crowbar, and here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. Crowbar is basically like a heavied up version of Thin Lizzy. And Crowbar worships at the feet of Thin Lizzy. I mean, he'll tell you firsthand. Thin Lizzy's one of his favorite bands of all time, so I know that's a huge influence on his writing. And so when you really start, because I didn't always think like Crowbar, Twin Guitar Attack. I just thought Crowbar, Kirk, sludge, breakdown, just the heaviest, mud thick, riffs ever. One of my favorite all time bands. It was a huge influence on us when we were in Sciatica.
Yeah.
And this genre as a whole, for sure. But then when you start really thinking of it from that angle, you're like, okay. And it really, what made me think was I had a little online video guitar lesson with Kirk during this pandemic. And we were kind of talking about it, and he was talking about how he writes all these harmonies. And so then you're like, oh yeah. And then, seeing Crowbar in concert, listening to their stuff, then you start, he's always writing 2-part guitar harmonies, but he's also writing a 3rd harmony for the bass. So Kirk he's all about the Twin Guitar Attack plus throwing in the bass, harmony. It's almost like a triple assault that you can hear, but you just kind of have to like change the way you're listening to it and go, holy crap, man. Like, really, it's like this is like, if Thin Lizzy was like a Black Sabbath, I mean, it's just like Black Sabbath and Thin Lizzy had a baby, and that's what Crowbar is to me. So, I mean, Kirk and Matt Brunson, they've been kind of the core guitar players in Crowbar for quite a while now. But you can throw anybody in there that Kirk's had over the years. Sammy,
I was going to say Sammy
from Goat War and Acid Bath, and and some of the other guys in the early days. I mean, the Steve Gibbs, I think, Gibbs, one of the Gibbs guys who's like related to the guy from the Bee Gees. He's like his son or something. Various other people. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. I think we're on to our final
final
style, which is an interesting one.
Definitely, it was this was one that I had to look up and get a list of bands to kind of go from. This last one is going to be post-hardcore, post-metal, whatever you're wanting to call it. When I looked up the list of bands, I was like, oh yeah, oh, okay, yeah, them, yeah. So my number 3 with this is going to be Botch. When ever since I first heard Botch, I was just enamored by them. I mean, like, just what, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, like, you listen to We Are the Romans, and like that'll kind of give you a general idea about what I'm talking about. Just great, technical, heavy, and then seeing their last show on YouTube, that cemented everything for me about just watching them live and feeling horrible that I never got to see them live. Just from watching that DVD, it made me feel that way. I was like, damn, I wish I could have seen these guys. Great live band. Think Dillinger, but more controlled. Dillinger's more chaos, which actually Dillinger was a band that I even forgot to even put on my list for Twin Guitar, which is that's my bad. But let's see. Okay, Botch number 3. Number 2, I put these guys in here only because of the twin guitar, and they have a great vocalist. Just new age, everything, kind of like how metal has become. I put Killswitch Engage. As far as a twin guitar, Jesse vocals, I mean, everything's just a great metal band of nowadays. I mean, if this is what kids would get into, it's a great stepping stone as far as getting into it and then diving more into metal from it. And then actually my number 1, you already know, I know, the forefathers of it all. They created the genre, Neurosis. We've already done a podcast about that. Yeah. If you'd like to know how I feel about that, you can check that out.
We may have an entire episode just dedicated to Neurosis, and probably one with Crowbar.
Oh yeah. But luckily, with this being our show, we can do whatever that. So it's just, by him bringing it up, we probably will now, just for sheer fact that we can and we will, and we'll start picking just like bands, and we'll both just feed off each other about what we think about and talk about it and everything. But Twin, like, because when I talked to you and then you threw those two bands at me about the twin thing, that's what totally just changed my whole thinking about my process of all this. So, I called them the shamans of sludge. You could call them you call them the whatever, but they will be. I would say out of all the years of listening to music, they would be in my top 5.
Absolutely.
Of all time.
Yep.
That if you're wanting to talk to me about music and if you throw that name out, I'm listening to you. I'll talk to you, like, because you know your shit, but this was a very difficult one to do, and then when we come back and start doing the decades, that will be even more difficult than what we're about to do. But I'm gonna shut up now, and I'm very curious as to hear what his what your top 3 is, Mike, with this one. So
Botch, good pick. Brian Cook from Russian Circles played bass in that band. Little known fact. Awesome. Speaking of Dillinger and Killswitch, those bands more than likely will be on one of my lists on the next episode when we do decades for sure. Which is the only reason I left some of those bands out, like Mastodon and some of these other guys. Yeah, so. All right, number 3 on my list. And this was really tough because it was number 2 and 3, leaving out one of these bands. I have to list my honorable mention as a 4th. And, well, I think maybe I didn't do my research enough because I don't actually know if they had 2 guitar players or not, but it would have been ISIS. I can't remember if that was a 2 guitar type.
They were a 5-piece.
Okay, so yes, that was a tough one because I kept going back and I'm like, ISIS is, like, for me, kind of right beneath Neurosis in this genre.
Oh yeah, it's the band ISIS, y'all. This is where we're going back. They were first, so
because when I think of like post metal, post hardcore, like there's the first 2 bands I think of are Neurosis and ISIS. But I left ISIS out only because of number 3, Amon Ra. Because I feel like this band deserves to be in the top 3 because they're freaking phenomenal.
Awesome.
I feel like Amon Ra has taken the Neurosis flag
and are waving it proudly.
Man, I mean, they took elements of Neurosis and the inspiration from that whole atmospheric big wall of sound, experimental dark heavy without being traditional heavy, and just took it to a whole new level. Like they're Neurosis, but they're heavier, and they're, I don't know how to describe it, man. But
I was spiritually moved by it. So I mean,
blown away. I mean, just absolutely blown away.
Their videos are just, will move you in some sort of way. Yes. And that's when I fell in love with them, was watching their videos and just, and then watching live stuff of them. That's live where I was like, man, the live show from Belgium. Yeah. You can look that up. That's amazing.
That's what hooked me instantly. Mass 5 and Mass 6, like those 2 albums are just masterpieces. So I'm going to mispronounce these because these guys are from Belgium. Mathal J. Vindikerkov and Lennart Basu, whatever.
Yeah.
Lennart has only been with them from 2008 to the present day, and the other guy's been with them since the beginning, 1999, but still they're kind of like the core, guys. The 2 of them have been doing this together in Amon Ra for 12 years now, and they've pretty much been a part of several of their albums, and definitely the last 2, which are just, to me, epic. Number 2, again, it was like keeping the band ISIS out of this was hard because I love ISIS. I'm a bigger fan of ISIS and have more of their albums than this number 2 band and Amon Ra as well. But after seeing, like, I own some of the albums by this number 2 band I'm about to mention, but after seeing some of their live concert footage, I'm like, I'm working on getting their entire catalog and daily slapping myself for why have I not been listening to this band for the last 20 years like I have with Neurosis. And I know this guy, was into him way back in the day when we were playing music together, and I just kind of never really paid attention. Cult of Luna. I mean, like, I watched one of their live concerts and they have 2 drummers on stage, like 3 guitar players. One of them does vocals, guitars, and I think keyboards. I mean, there's like 7 guys on stage. And it was beautiful, and it was heavy, and it was dark, and it was... I don't know, man. I think Cult of Luna is like one of the best bands in this genre. I mean, and they have 3 guitar players. Okay, so the third one, Magnus Lindberg, he does percussion and guitar. So, I mean, these guys are like rotating instruments, but they've got like a core 2 guitar, and then they've got the third guy that does guitar sometimes. But anyway, Cult of Luna, man, Swedes.
Wow. Yeah.
All these guys, you know, like from these other countries, it's just they're, and Cult of Luna is from the same place in Sweden as Meshuggah.
Wow.
So boom, how can the same small town in Sweden produce 2 bands that good? Wow, something in the water for sure.
No doubt.
And of course, the first one, I'm not even going to mention it. We're just going to end the episode. That's Neurosis, man. Scott Kelly, Steve Von Till. Like, there's really nothing else you can say about this. They're the kings, the godfathers, and the reason why this genre exists, even though they unknowingly created this genre. Because I've watched interviews where people mention these things, and they, you know, they're kind of like, I don't even know what. Those guys don't even really know what that means, you know. And I want to say it was their. I don't know if it was Jason or Noah, but one of those guys in this particular interview said, you know, not to toot our horns, but you could probably just create a genre and call it Neurosis. Like Neurosis is its own genre. And then you could put all of these bands, probably all the ones we just most of the ones we mentioned under that category. What the genre of Neurosis? Well, you've got Isis, Cult of Luna, Amun Ra, you know. So anyway, yeah, that's it, man. You know, Neurosis. Neurosis and Crowbar, I mean, they're going to be on number 1 on a lot of lists for both of us for sure. So we're going to end as we always do. Tell me about any particular stuff you've been checking out lately besides the plethora of twin guitar bands. And then I'll give you my huge list.
So, I got a text from him the other night to check out a band called I can't even say their name now.
Judiciary?
Judiciary, yes. Okay. Fell down a rabbit hole.
Oh, me too.
There's a YouTube channel. I think the person is like X Brutal Youth 6 whatever, butchering it. But if you can find that, oh man, hey, I found some. It was these EPs that are only 11 to 15 minutes long, and they are awesome. Okay, you
they're all sold out on Bandcamp. You can't get it.
Okay, you have them. Then I found this other one called Guilt Trip. Great stuff. Okay, then the other night when I went back because I was bored and started and found another one called a band called Back Down. Okay, they're from the UK. I would say that Back Down is probably the closest thing to the term of what you would call metalcore. Metalcore gets thrown around and you can think whatever, but I'm going by pure definition of what metal and hardcore, and that's Back Down. Unfortunately, the album that I listened to, both of their EP, one's 2016 and 2018, then got on Facebook and was like, I gotta go and like these guys. You know, that's what I do. I like something I like, so I can start they broke up after they put out the Center album. They play with that agnostic front and then they break up. But that, I don't know, man. Like that stuff is, because I was flipping through and there was another band called Body Bag that I was checking. Unfortunately, the vocals were not good. The logo was very black metalish, and I was confused. I was listening to stuff with my girlfriend, and I was like, if I'm going by logo, I'm thinking black metal, but it's in a metalcore thing. And I was like, let's just give it a shot, you know. Musically, it was on point, you know. Dude comes in with vocals, I had to turn it. Oh, and Lita was the same way. Lita was like, if he had harsher vocals on it, they would be a known tier band, you know. Sorry. But that's really what I've been listening to, other than borrowing the In Flames album from you that I was doing the work for probably about 2 weeks straight. And then going from that to Life of Agony, and then The River Runs Red. And then I went from that now to Nevermore. I've been going back and forth from Nevermore. There's a twin guitar thing. That's not. I love Nevermore to death. And I had to look them up to figure out what they were called. I was feeling more traditional, and then I was like, well, damn, I can't put them in with pretty, like, oh, that's why it was so hard. Because I'm like, you start thinking of stuff, and I'm like, I was like you though. I'd be like, oh, this band, and I'm like, well, I only got one guitar player.
Yeah.
Shit. And it's like, okay, next, okay, oh yeah, I like these guys,
Yeah.
But a lot of what I've been listening to is what we've probably mentioned, probably the same thing. Yeah. So it's like, it was so it's so much Exodus, like Exodus and Testament. But the Incendiary, that band is so awesome. They are another one that has the pure definition of metalcore. The album is called 1,000 Mile Stare. Awesome.
You can get that, I think, off of Closed Casket Activities, because that's where I ordered the Judiciary album.
Really?
From. They had that. That's where I got the latest Acacia Strain album and the latest End album.
Nice.
So there's a few. They've got a few good releases, and they had a bunch of other stuff that was sold out. I got Gatecreeper Iron Reagan split from Closed Casket too. So they've got some cool stuff, yeah. And their music's cheap. Like their CDs are like $10, so very affordable, and they you usually get it in a couple of weeks or so. So cool stuff. So yeah, I went down the whole rabbit hole too when I. The way it happened is I was watching a Locked Horns quarantine interview where one of the guys from Locked Horns was at home, and it was recent, and he was interviewing the guitar player from a band called Creeping Death, which is, yes, they're named after a Metallica song, and they're a death metal band from Texas. And so that guy started mentioning other bands, and then the Locked Horns guy, Daniel Decay, he was interviewing him, and he was mentioning what's going on with Texas. Like Texas has got all this great metal coming out now. Like, back in the day, you had Pantera and stuff like that, but
Piss and Grazers.
But now, there's this new crop of young people, and so Creeping Death, and they're a death metal band that came from the hardcore scene that did name their band after the Metallica song. So I mean, it's just like this weird kind of little weird, like, because the guitar player said that he was a drummer originally, so he's like he was a drummer in a local hardcore band. And all the guys were like from the hardcore scene, but then they love Metallica, and they were like, yeah, why not? Why not name our new band after a Metallica song? Mm-hmm. And then because they were pretty much like, we don't care. And then they started kind of like they wanted to do something different, so they got into like Bolt Thrower and all this death metal stuff, and it's awesome. And I'm a big fan of them now. And so Judiciary was a band that was mentioned because, oh yeah, and the guy's like, oh, we love Judiciary. And then they were talking about Trapped Under Ice, another band named after a Metallica song that I'm not really big into. They're way more in the punk hardcore vein, and I tried, but it's not really my cup of tea. But anyway, so I went down the rabbit hole with Judiciary and Incendiary and Guilt Trip, like Chris was telling me about. And so through that guy's YouTube channel, and then these live festivals.